Knowing how to create and identify different types of synth sounds is a key feature for a producer. It's something that's going to speed up your workflow. It's something that's going to help eliminate a lot of trial and error and flipping through presets aimlessly. And it's just something that I think everybody needs to learn at one point or another. So in this video, I wanted to go over how to identify and create synth pads in 5 different styles. And these are applicable for any genre from pop to hip hop to electronic. These are 5 really, really basic types of synth pads. And I'm going to go over how to create those from scratch in Serum. If you like the presets, you can download them in the description below. But more importantly, we're going to develop some of those fundamental techniques that you can use to create these and then build off of that for your own production. So we're going to hop into Cubase so I can show you 5 types of synth pads that you need to know how to identify and create. But before we do that, my name's Austin. You're watching Make Pop Music. This is a channel where we have weekly tutorials about music and music production. If you like this video, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe because it helps us out a ton. And at the end of the video, if you want to check out anything from us and support the channel, you can head over to makepopmusic.com where you can check out all of our free and paid content, more free presets. We have paid presets, sample packs, courses. We have a podcast. So head over to our website and check that out. But let's dive into Cubase so I can show you 5 synth patches and how to make them. The first synth patch that I want to talk about is something called a Mellow pad. You can also call these filler pads. These are going to be pads that are pretty filtered out and they work really, really nice as a background element to either thicken a section of a song or just to create a nice kind of open landscape for your vocal and your other production elements. So let's hop into Serum so I can show you how to make a mellow or filler pad. Once you open Serum, this is going to be your initialized page. It'll sound like this. It's very generic, just a kind of standard buzzy saw synth. But what we're going to do is we're going to kind of start with this. We're going to drive this unison up because what this is going to do is it's going to give us extra voices and it's going to spread those out. We're going to bring the detune down to like 0.15. And you can hear that that's going to give us a little bit of width. And then we're going to drive the blend up to where the sides are a little bit louder than the center. That's about good right there. The next thing that you want to do for these kind of mellow filler pads is turn on some kind of filter. So we're going to use the MG24 for this. It's just a low cut with a 24 dB slope. You could also do a 12 dB slope. Or you could just go to their normal low 24. It just kind of depends on where the resonance is and what you like. We're going to use that for now. So we're already in a good spot. The next thing that you're going to want to do is adjust your attack, decay, sustain, and release. So for a pad, typically I'll have a slower attack so it can kind of ease into it. And then we're going to make this decay just a hair, and then we're going to give it a little bit of release. So as you let go, it'll still play. If the release is at 0, as soon as you let go, it stops. If you drive it up, it's going to keep going just a little bit. So now, that's a pretty good basis for a filler pad. What you could do to take it to the next level is you could turn on your second oscillator and you could turn this up an octave. We're going to, again, make this pretty wide. Let's even go to 9 on unison. That's going to add 9 extra voices. And let's detune this right about here as well. Turn the blend all the way up. Let's turn this down a little bit because I don't want that high octave so apparent. And then what you can do is you can just adjust this to taste. So if you want a little bite, you can add some resonance to your filter. And you can even turn on key tracking for your filter. So if you do that, you're going to want to adjust your cutoff. And now it's going to track that cutoff and that resonance throughout whatever key you play. So this is going to give you kind of a nice peak bite. So let's turn that resonance down just a hair. Then we're going to go through and post-process. For something like this, I'll probably add a little bit of chorus to give us some modulation, and then I'll add quite a bit of reverb. And for the reverb, I want to cut out some of that low end. I don't really need that, and I want to allow some more high end. We're going to drive the wetness up because I like a nice wet pad, and then let's just drive the reverb size and the decay up a hair. And this is a really good basis to kind of a mellow filler pad. If you wanted to make this drier, something like in the song Dancing with a Stranger from Sam Smith and Normani, you could do like that. You could even take the sustain all the way up so it doesn't decay at all. And then you can turn on your portamento, so if you want that to kind of slide from note to note. Let's turn that reverb back on, add a little bit of release, and here you go. there's kind of a nice filler mellow pad for you. That's how you create it from scratch. The next thing that I want to talk about is a brass pad. There are also brass synths, but we're going to kind of make this more pad driven since that's the vibe of the video. So let's go ahead and open Serum again. We're going to start with the same exact kind of sound. Let's turn that down a hair. And what you're going to want to do for this is craft your ADSR, so your attack, decay, sustain, and release, to give this the kind of shape of a brass stab. So you're going to want that decay where it's going to hit and sustain a little bit, but you've got a lot of that decay baked in. We're going to do something really similar where we drive these voices up because we want a nice wide pad. We can leave this one a little bit more in the middle. Let's even turn that detune down a little bit and that blend down a little bit. And then very similarly, we're going to use a filter. But what's important is now we need to activate that filter with some kind of attack. So we're going to route this envelope 1. So in Serum, all you have to do is click on it, drag it over to cutoff, and then you're going to see these blue markers right here show you where that's going to activate between. So you can see that once it's up here, that cutoff filter is all the way open, and then it's sloping down to being all the way closed. What you can do is you can take your mouse right here and you can drag it, and that's going to change the parameters that alters between. And we're going to, for something like a synth brass, we're going to open this pretty bright, and then it's going to sustain to kind of the middle. And that's a nice little start. Then the next thing that I'll start doing is, again, kind of adding textural layers. So in something like this, maybe we can go to analog. Let's try a different kind of sound. Make sure that that's being hit with a filter as well. And that's just going to thicken it up a little bit. To make it kind of analog, you could even adjust this fine tune. So we'll have one negative, let's do like -9 and one +7 on fine tuning. And since I want this to be a brass pad, let's go ahead and let's make that decay and that sustain a little bit less dramatic. We can adjust this filter if we want something more dramatic as well. And if you want a little bit of that ramp up, you can just drag your attack up. And that's kind of the basis for creating a brass pad. You could also add a little bit of noise. Let's go ahead and make sure that that filter is hitting that as well. And we're going to select analog, JP106 high pass. And then same thing, you can just do your post-processing. I'll probably add a little bit more chorus once again, maybe some reverb. This time I might go for something like a plate, make it really wide, get that low out of there. Let's get that sounding a little bit darker. There we go. And then we can shorten this up. That's a little dramatic. Let's try something like that. And if you have that sustain not at infinite negative, then it's going to hold for as long as you hold for. If we drag this all the way down, it's just going to hit. And once that sustain gets to 0, there's going to be no sound. So that would be more like how to make a pluck, but since we're doing pad, we'll leave it right here around like -5.5, -6. And that's a pretty good basis for creating a brass pad. You can make this as subtle or as dramatic as you want. So like you could even increase this and have it more soft coming in. That's a big thing that pads will do, but that's the basis for how to create a brass pad. You just want a couple really bright oscillators, so something like a saw wave and something like a square or a triangle, just to give you a little bit of buzz, and then you can use that filter to kind of tame and control those. Let's move on to something that is kind of similar but operating on the opposite side of the spectrum, and that is a string pad. For a string pad, we're going to create it kind of similarly to the brass, but instead of it having that envelope where it gets a little bit darker as it progresses, the string pad is going to be a brighter kind of top pad. So what we're going to do is let's just create a different sound with a different oscillator, because we've been using this kind of generic saw wave the entire time. So let's try something like the Juno. That could be a cool vibe. What we're going to do for this is create a slow attack, and then we're going to create a long decay where the sustain will kind of fall as well. So let's do something like this. Let's turn that filter on because we don't want quite all of that top end. And then we're going to make this wide, but not quite as wide as that brass. Let's add in the first oscillator, or the second oscillator as well. Let's do something that's got a little bit of movement. So let's do a bend plus. And what we're going to do right here is take oscillator or LFO1, drag that to the bend. And let's slow this down quite a bit. So let's do like 2 bar. You can even do something like that with the first oscillator. So let's do bend minus, and we'll just drag that down so it's not so dramatic. Let's bring this unison up to 3, but we won't make it super wide. So now we're kind of getting that like Selena-esque top end string pad. This is something that they did a lot in like the 70s and 80s to fill out tracks. They had a synthesizer called the Selena. It was great for this. A lot of people also did this on their Junos or their Jupiters. And it's just a nice way to add some buzz to the top of your track. Again, you can post-process this however you want. For this one, I might do a little bit of EQ just to kind of get rid of some of the highs and the lows. Do a little bit of band passing. And something that might be cool to do for this is, since it's kind of long, what we can do is we can drag LFO2 to these fine tunes, and let's bring these down to like 18. And what that's going to do is that's going to kind of modulate the fine tune pitch. And we can slow this down. If we unselect BPM, it's going to go off of an anchor for just like a hertz rate LFO. We can drag this way down. And that modulation and that fine tuning is going to create that like sense of vintage. It's going to give you that like sense of something kind of morphing over time. And we'll get into evolving and morphing pads in just a second, but that could be something that's really fun to do. So you could always do the opposite as well, where you have one oscillator going, you know, fine tuning left and right, and then you have the other one going right and left, and they're kind of acting as opposite. So it's kind of crossing over and giving this like weird kind of fine tuned phasey sound. So that's another cool option we saw on the Juno brass kind of pad, that we could just set that fine tuning to something static. And then like this, if you want to add an LFO to kind of give yourself some of that drift, that's going to happen a lot in analog synthesizers. So when you hold down that string pad, you're getting something really dramatic, really vintage, really kind of nice and bright, but still kind of thin. Let's move on to a bass pad. Bass pads are probably what I use the most. A lot of the time you might hear these referred to as like a bass pad, a Reese bass, kind of a hip hop bass. It's basically just going to be a bass that you filter out and it can kind of sustain. So a lot of basses will have attack and decay and transients and releases and stuff like that. Not this. This is going to be really simple. What we need to do for this is, let's turn this down a couple octaves. Just a saw wave. You could also use a square wave for this. Maybe we try that just to kind of show you how different it sounds. So let's go to our basic shapes. And then what you can do is turn on your filter, and I'm going to go, let's go normal 24 on this. And what you can do now is let's turn on that key tracking and let's find that resonance where this really shines. All right, that feels good for now. We can add a little bit of release. Let's also make this mono because we don't want two notes to play at once. And then let's turn on some portamento so we have a little bit of slide. So select always, slide that up. And now what we can do to add some of that width that you're probably going to want is take this, and you can leave this at the standard octave or an octave down. You just want it to be a slightly different octave than oscillator A. And we're going to route that again to that same cutoff filter. But we're going to drag the voices of this one up so we can have that width. But since we're in a slightly different octave and we're using a different wavetable, we're not going to get phasing issues. And this can be a really cool way to have that nice wide kind of Reese bass pad that is not going to have really crazy phasing issues or not going to have this really wide stereo field. Where if we take oscillator A and we make this super wide, that could be cool if you want that movement from the phasing, but I don't. And that sounds great to me. You could also kind of modulate this cutoff if you wanted to for this, like less is more. I wouldn't do more than like 4 or 5%. Let's turn this to trigger, so every time we hit, it starts at the start. And let's go to like 2 bar. See, even at 5%, that's really aggressive. Maybe we go to like 1 or 2. And then what you can do to kind of take this one to the next level is I like adding some distortion. So typically I'll go for diode 1 or diode 2. And then what I'm going to do is post-process this. So this is going to add distortion, and then it's going to add an extra filter after the post-processing. And let's just drag that Q down so there's not this crazy resonance boost because we already have that happening. And then let's drag the mix down quite a bit. That can be really cool for getting that to kind of pop in your mix. If we take that oscillator 2 and turn it down to only being 1 octave above, and then we can even mess with that resonance. A lot of the time that resonance bite, that's going to kind of make it pop out of the mix, especially that paired with that saturation. And with some of those basic parameters, now you've got a really nice bass pad that can kind of just keep sustaining. And let's move on to our last pad that's going to be evolving and morphing pads. These can be really, really nice to add a lot of ambience and texture into your mix or into your production. And these are going to be by far the craziest where you can just go nuts with whatever kind of modulation you want. All right, we have our initialized sound. Let's go ahead and select some wavetables for this one. I kind of want to start off with just like a sine wave that's going to give us this nice like round bubbly vibe. And then what we can do for the second one is let's go to like some of these spectral noises that come in Serum. And I'm going to drag LFO1 so this wavetable position can morph throughout. So let's drag the unison of this up to, let's do 7. You can kind of just experiment, do whatever you want. Let's turn this to trigger so it starts at the same point every time. And let's turn this down to 2 bar. Let's get that filter going because that's a little bit abrasive. We're going to go to a 24 dB, and I'm just going to have this follow that same kind of 2 bar rise and fall. We can even have this modulate. Let's do like a bend over here. And then what's really important about these evolving pads is mixing in some kind of noise or soundscape. So Serum comes with some, but the cool thing is that you can also drag whatever you want into this noises folder. So you could literally just like either record something really, really strange, like you could just take a field recording of it being outside, you could record some chimes or whatever and drag it in, and then you can process that the exact same way that we're about to do this. However, I'm just going to use something from here so you can kind of follow along. So let's just go ahead and grab something like Prophecy. I'm going to mute these so you can kind of hear what this is doing, and I'm going to turn the filter off. And we're going to enable pitch tracking so this has some pitch to it. And I'm going to turn on the first oscillator so we can match the pitch. So I'm going to turn it up 24 semitones. That's 2 octaves so it can kind of match the texture of the sine and the oscillator B. Let's go ahead and engage that filter one more time. And you can mess around. Maybe I want to use something different. Maybe I want to use effects, or maybe let's use Elysium. Electricity is kind of cool. Let's keep that for now. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add phaser, chorus, flanger, pretty much whatever, just to give me some extra stereo modulation, give me some just kind of weird honkiness. And I'm also going to add some delay. Let's do ping pong so we have some stereo delay happening back and forth. I'm going to have the mix pretty high, and let's filter this out so you can drag this right here. Bandpass that up a little bit. And then same thing that we did earlier with reverb. I'm going to drag the spin depth all the way up so we have this kind of wide, super modulated room. And let's make this pretty reverby. All right. Now let's adjust that attack, decay, sustain, and release so it's kind of got some movement to it. Let's try the key tracking and see if we like that a little better. I'm going to adjust the cutoff. Keep messing around with these. And then what we can do is we can add one last filter to kind of modulate everything all together. So let's make this a rising filter, and let's just do kind of right here. Let's go 4 bars or 8 bars so it has a lot of time to kind of build up. And then what you can do is you can set this to envelope, so once it rises to the top, it won't restart. Then I'm going to drag an EQ last just so we can shape some of this low end because we got quite a bit of mud. Shape a little bit more of that high end, not anything too crazy. And let's see what we have. And you can turn on legato, so when you turn on legato, it's not going to basically restart this envelope every single time. So like if you do it like without it, you can hear how it starts to like restart every single envelope in LFO. So if you want to keep adding extra notes and layers and stuff like that, keep legato on so you can always kind of add your extra notes on top without restarting all of your envelopes and LFOs. And then if you want to go portamento, this might make it even crazier. And there's a nice, crazy, spacey room. You could even go further and you could modulate things like the panning. So we could drag this over to pan, we could drag this over to pan, and we could completely flip them. So now they're going to operate opposite of each other. And now we have a ton of stereo width and a ton of extra texture. So those are the 5 pads you need to know how to identify. There's going to be your mellow filler pads. There's going to be your brass pads that kind of add a little bit of attack and then sustain and decay really, really slowly. You're going to have your string pads that kind of sit in a higher register that take forever to kind of get to where they need to be, but they're generally pretty bright. You're going to have your bass pads that kind of sit under everything and just act as these long big, ominous basses. And then you're going to have your evolving pads, whether that's in Serum or Omnisphere or Analog Lab. And those are ones that just operate on LFOs and envelopes, opening and closing different parameters as it goes, just to add a little bit of extra texture. And again, if you want to layer in your own textural elements with those, it takes it even a step further. But if you enjoyed this video, please let us know in the comments down below and like the video. If you really, really like the video, please make sure you subscribe to the channel because we do videos like this every single Friday. And then if you want to support the channel, you can head over to makepopmusic.com. Check out all of our free and paid content over there, including sample packs, preset packs, courses, blog posts. We have a podcast. We really, really appreciate all the love and support. But that's going to do it for this video. We will see you guys next week with much more content. But until then, much love. Peace.